Welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willis, your host. Thank you so kindly for being here. Today we have a special guest. Juan Riboldi is an international business advisor and principal and president of Ascent Advisor, a management consulting firm. He is the author of the upcoming book, Strategic Transformation: How to Deliver What Matters Most. For over 20 years, Riboldi has been advising leaders at the highest levels of business, education, and government on strategy, organization, and execution. His clients include Fortune 50 corporations as well as fast-growing private enterprises. He successfully launched and led 3 consulting firms and completed postgraduate studies at Harvard Business School and Wharton School of Business. Welcome aboard, Juan Riboldi. How are you doing today?
Very well. Thanks, Egberto. It's a real pleasure being with you today.
It's a pleasure having you on. Before we go into talking a little bit about your book, one of the issues we want to talk about is immigration, immigrants, etc. And you said something that made me wonder for a bit, because as it turns out, both of us are immigrants. I'm from Panama, you're from Argentina. Now, you said that you think the climate now is different than the climate that it was in 1980. You came here in 1980, I came here in 1979. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, definitely it was a very different experience back then. The immigration policy was a lot simpler, and the path to becoming a legal citizen, if you were qualified and met some basic requirements, didn't cost as much money, and it didn't take as long. In my particular case, it was pretty straightforward. I was an international student, ended up marrying an American, and it really, in a matter of 3 years and $300, I was a legal citizen of the United States, and I've been very happy all that time. I know now that today people can spend upwards of 10, 15 years, even the rest of their lives, trying to find a path to legalization. And I have friends that have spent over $60,000 in legal fees and procedures, and they're still not able to finalize their paperwork. So it shouldn't be that complicated and that expensive for qualified immigrants. That's essentially the point.
Now, there are some that would say that, well, there are other countries where you can't even do that. You can't ever become a real citizen of that country. So we are a special country in that all of us, I'm a US citizen, you're a US citizen, we have the ability to adapt a new country and can be anything in this country, of course, except being president, but can be anything else in this country.
Yeah, definitely it is a country of great opportunities, and the United States has historically set a very high bar for the rest of the world, and many other countries have looked up to the United States for those reasons. It has attracted immigrants throughout the centuries for those very reasons. But definitely there are other countries that are a lot more tight with their immigration policy. So without necessarily debating which approach is best, what I value about America and the United States is these kind of like more of a melting pot cultural mindset to bring people from a lot of different places in the world, provide an opportunity, and this country has been built on immigrants like you and I, people that have come seeking for better opportunities, work hard, and create a path for our generations in the future.
Now, you're from Argentina. Tell me a little bit about first of all, why did you really come here? You came here, you said, to study, but Argentina has very good schools as well. Chile has very good schools. Brazil has very good schools. Why did you choose America?
So two things. Definitely, I had a very good education in Argentina. In fact, the 2 years of university education that I had in Argentina transferred one for one, class for class, to 2 years of university education in the United States. So that's really a good proof that the quality of the education was very comparable. Now, having a degree from an American university opens the doors to a lot of different things. I know full well that the opportunities that I've had since graduating from universities here has been significantly better had I stayed in Argentina. But there is this other side to the story, that I grew up through 12 years of a military dictatorship. The regime was very oppressive. the curfews were becoming more and more controlling, to the point that people were unjustly imprisoned or tried for crimes that they didn't commit or anything like that. So the experience of growing up in Argentina was not necessarily endearing for me. And as soon as I came to America, it didn't take very long for me to realize that this was a completely different country where I felt I have more rights, even as an immigrant, as an international student, that I would have in my own country.
You know, that is amazing because what you had to say about, having the military junta in Argentina and also coming here to the United States and seeing the type of freedoms that we had here. And that's why it's so disconcerting over the last several years. And this didn't happen just over this administration. This has been happening for quite some time now. We've started to have a lot of these paramilitary type institutionalists that we find in Colombia, that we find in Venezuela, that we find in all these other places. And I don't know, bring back memories to the kind of things that we have overseas. And there are many times I've spoken to some of the organizations that I work with here, and I say, like, I've seen this before. And unlike many Americans don't understand that humanity, irrespective of where it's from, acts the same way. And the same thing that occurred in Argentina, the same thing that occurred in Chile, the same thing that occurred in Panama and all these other places when we have these type of revolts could happen here. What did it feel like when you turned on your TV on January 6th and saw what you saw?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Immediately was feeling of reliving the beginning or the early stages of that process that led to some of the most controlling and most radical forms of government. And when you see the rule of the mob, you're never going to find justice or freedom. So it was definitely very discouraging. I didn't ever expect to see that happening in America. I would have expected to see that happening in Argentina or in a third world country where we come from, that we're familiar to these type of things happening. And I hope that we don't have to repeat those type of events. I hope that the United States can live up to its higher purpose and its greater charter in the world. This is a country that has a leadership position in the world, and we are supposed to set an example and not uh, become part of what we've seen in so many other places. That ends up, destroying institutions that create civilization.
The truth is, I really think that immigrants are going to be sort of the saviors of this, because those of us who've gone through this, when I speak to groups at times, I tell them what can be. And at first they're incredulous. And then they've seen January 6th and the phone kind of started ringing and saying, oh, I see what you mean now. So it can happen here as well. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, exactly. I was working at an office where there's several other colleagues, and immediately as they turned their screens to what was happening, they all turned to me and said, "This is what you live through in Argentina." And I said, "Remarkably similar." And it's I never imagined seeing this in America.
It was shocking. I can't say it was surprising. It was shocking to actually see it happen. I saw the genesis of it. In other words, and I'm sure you did as well. You could see that we were
Yeah.
marching into that sort of mob irrationality with the false stories and the created
Mhm.
stories, etc. Now, in as much as we are here now, I don't think that we've really crossed the line. I think we averted quite a bit. Um, do you feel that, based on what you've seen here now, that you can be a net positive in with your rhetoric, with what you do to help this situation?
Well, throughout my whole life and what I do for a living as a consultant is about helping organizations work better together. And this is not about just improving corporate performance. It's also about improving the conditions of people and customers and all of us as a society to find better ways of working together. So definitely is um, everything that I do is towards finding a way to unify the many divisions and divisiveness that exist in the nation, to learn from our differences rather than fight over those differences, to find better solutions in creative ways, to collaborate, to really look beyond personal opinions and differences, and just realize that we're in this together and we have to get out of this together too. So we have to find a way out. I still believe that this country and in society at large in the world will rise to a higher level, but we're definitely going through a very period of a great uncertainty, and everyone still feels it. And we're not through this. I think that we're kind of like feeling our way. We're in the middle of a pandemic that is only exacerbating some of the other political tensions, and we have a lot of social tensions that surface from time to time, and the political uncertainty adds to that. So I think that we will have to figure out how to unite and collaborate and work together to bring this country forward.
What I wish more, and the reason I ask you that is that I kind of got that from the narrative that you give. In as much as we say a melting pot, I kind of prefer a salad, right? Una ensalada. In other words, you don't have to turn it into one fusion. You can actually have, because I'll be honest with you, some weekends I like to go have me some Indian food. I don't want a mixture of Indian and Panamanian. I want real Indian food. I love it. Sometimes I want Chinese food, northern Chinese food sometimes, and southern Chinese food sometimes. I just want something Italian, So I like the idea of enjoying the differences in things and using, and I wish that's what we taught, that we didn't have to be the same, that we could enjoy the differences, And I think if we learned that, it would be so much more positive than trying to say, let's all speak English. Let's all march this line. What's your thoughts on that?
So I think that differences between people and groups and organizations are inevitable because we're all different. They're necessary because that helps us grow and be better. And they're desirable for the very reasons that you were alluding to. We enjoy appreciating those differences. There's richness in that diversity. So if we can start looking beyond those differences as being a problem, an obstacle, something that we need to overcome, or get everyone convinced that there's one right way. There is not one right way. There's many different ways, and all of them are pretty okay. So the reality here is that we need to take the best that each person brings and try to build something better going forward. So is there a need as a country to have some form of, common ground? Probably. I mean, we have a constitution is our common ground. We have a set of laws. That's our common ground. There are common grounds that we all at some point need to agree to. But beyond that, we can allow a lot of differences and diversity to flourish. It would only enrich us if we can accept that as something that is good and something that is valuable and not be afraid of it.
Exactly, and that's a great experiment that happens here. I mean, I interviewed a doctor from originally from India, and she said we have so many cultures in India, but the one thing I love about America is that we have all those different cultures we have in India, but then we also have the Latin American cultures, the Caribbean cultures. So this is really the place that we have all of that. And the magic is that we've held it so long. And what's going to be difficult is for us to hold it all together even as we grow. Let's talk a little bit about strategic transformation, how to deliver what matters for most. Tell me about your book. I didn't read it, but I love the title, and I want to talk about that transformation. Tell me a little bit about it.
So I think we all recognize that we live in a world of accelerating change. And change has been constant. Everyone knows that change is the only constant. But in the last several decades, change has not been constant, has been exponential. So the rate of change is accelerating at an exponential rate. So not even change is constant. So the point is that not all the change that we see happening in the world is necessarily for the better. So my focus has been on figuring out what makes the difference between those individuals, groups of people, and organizations that changed for the better, that actually made a step forward and advance things in a positive way versus the ones that change for change's sake, or maybe change in a way that make things worse. And we experience all of that in the world today. The part that is very interesting is that even as I research this topic of organizational change, you find that there's a third of changes that are very successful. The companies like Apple Computers and Microsoft and Google and all that that do extremely well. There's a third that somehow just stay in the game and are able to keep up with the economy and the competition. And there's a third that essentially become less and less relevant and ultimately may go out of business. And unfortunately, we see a lot of people in that bucket too. So the question is that just the kind of a random thing? And when you really look closely inside of what those individuals, people, and organizations did, they made choices that help them make the change a positive thing. And the fundamental choice behind all of this is whether we see the change going on out there as an opportunity or as a threat. The moment that you see what is going on as a threat, we start becoming defensive, we start protecting ourselves, we start distancing ourselves from others, and you start even blaming others. And at that point, you are creating a self-fulfilling prophecy that you will actually lose out in the process. People that look at what's happening as an opportunity reframe the real threats in the situation. It's not like the threats are imaginary. They are very real, but they reframe them as an opportunity and find a way forward in that we can all benefit from it. And all of a sudden, then the people that are potentially a threat become my partners and become the people I work with to find a solution. And we work through solutions to achieve a higher state. And when I talk about strategic transformation, is that I see all the time individuals and organizations that are choosing to move to that higher level. And as they do that, they do things that are remarkable. And they take us forward. They're advancing our standard of living, our civilization to a whole new level. And that's what I'm really excited about, to help move in that direction.
Well, listen, Juan, examination. I tengo un examen para ti ahora. Quick
Okay.
exam. Exxon has been lobbying Congress to really make believe that there isn't this thing called climate change. You're a consultant. You were hired by Exxon to make things right because Exxon is going into the ground because people are realizing climate change is real. They've been doing exactly what you said. They've been looking at climate change not as an opportunity. They've been looking at climate change as a problem that they had to fight. It is Juan Riboldi's time to go speak to one of the executives at Exxon. What are you going to tell him?
So the point is, there's no point on denying the changes that are going on in the world, climate change being one of them, and many other trends. The real opportunity for organizations like Exxon is to find the opportunity in that situation. And in this moment, I probably couldn't tell exactly what that is, but I'm sure that even in the acknowledgement of realities like climate change, we can find ways that companies like Exxon can be a partner, a global citizen in not only solving this problem, but addressing it in creative ways through the technologies and the markets that they serve. It may sound like, not likely right now. People may want to say, all fossil fuels are the problem. There must be a very clever application for that we may have not thought through that could be part of the greater solution. But the point is, let's not try to fight that. Let's accept it for what it is and start working towards a solution.
I think that is so important because I'm going to pick up on what you just said right there. Because I think if Exxon during, I don't know if you remember back in 79, when both of us got here, you 80, me 79, there's this thing called a syn fuel where they're going to create synthetic fuels, and synthetic fuels could have been done from biomass and all these things, which biomass is actually a green technology when you look at it because it's circular, right? You get carbon, you put the carbon back and you get carbon and that sort of a thing. And they blew their chance. How long ago was 79 again? That is, my daughter is pretty darn old now. And It's a long time, and look how much time was wasted because they didn't believe in strategic transformation, nor did they believe in how to deliver what matters most. Juan Riboldi, this is a question I ask everybody, and it goes as follows. What would you have liked me to ask you that I didn't?
Well, probably what I like best about living in America.
Tell me.
So I love the opportunities that this country brings. I love the diversity of this country. Even in the chaotic and convoluted times that we live, I still feel that this country allows for a lot of different views and expression of those views. And even when those views sometimes lead us into violent encounters, I think that we as a society are able to rise above all that, and just like we've seen happening recently, still have a peaceful transition of power to a new presidency. And that is an example that I think is a legacy of this country, and I want it to last forever.
I think that is an excellent closer because I think we both concur on that. It's so important for folks to know those people who came here had a choice, and that we want this place to succeed makes us some of the biggest patriots in the country. Juan Riboldi, thank you so kindly for having been here on Politics Done Right. You have
Thank
a
you.
wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, Alberto. Pleasure being with you.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number one, subscribe to our channel, and number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.